So we're talking a little bit about fire ants and this time of year, why it's important to do, you know, these treatments now rather than later. Talk a little bit about that and why that's so important.
Yeah, I mean, fire ants, like any other pest, prevention is key. So if you can get ahead of the ball game instead of being behind the 8 ball, you're always going to come out ahead, especially when you have events coming up, birthday parties, different things like that, where people are going to be invited over and hanging out in the yard. If you don't regularly use your yard, maybe a lot of times we tell people that if you're going to be using the backyard regularly on the weekends, sure, treat those areas, but you don't have to treat the entire yard if you're not going to be enjoying it. So you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money, but you can broadcast in the yard to kind of keep things under control, just a general insecticide that will help with ants. And then, or you can drench mounds themselves with an insecticide, kill them that way. And then you have granular baits that you can use that they grab and then feed and take down into the soil where the queen's at. All of them can be effective. A lot of times using them all together is probably most effective, you know. So if you do that before the season begins or as the season's beginning, then throughout the season you're going to do really well. You'll be fine. You know, if you don't do anything, it's kind of like weed control. If you don't do pre-emergent stuff, then you're going to deal with weeds, you know. So same with ants and any kind of pests. If you don't do any kind of preventative, you're going to have the occasional bug, and if you don't want any bugs, then you need to do prevention. Yeah, I grew up and we had a bug every now and then, you know. It wasn't no big deal, but some people they don't want to see any bugs, and in East Texas that's unrealistic, but you can do things to help manage it, you know.
Yeah, for sure. So, and you know, a big part of this is treating it now, because a lot of times with the ones with wings get up, move to a different area.
Sure.
Multiply that way. They multiply really fast during that time. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times what you do is you'll get a product from a local retailer, you'll sprinkle it on the mound, and then 2 days later it's moved to another location. And that's why you want to use maybe a broadcast insecticide to help prevent that movement throughout the yard. Then that product you've purchased becomes more effective because you have product everywhere else working in conjunction with it. But yeah, I mean, doing those kind of things are going to be long-term control, you know. Like I said, you know, if you don't, you're going to be behind the 8 ball, and you're always going to be every weekend sprinkling product here, there, and yonder, you know. So obviously with our rains and stuff, you're going to see more activity. So again, when you have products throughout the yard, there's not that movement from one mound to the other is going to be a lot less because you have product everywhere, you know, doing a preventive. You got a barrier, basically, a yard barrier, you know.
Yeah. And something I think too that they kind of say is the Texas two-step, the way to kind of describe to people what that is and how it's kind of a multi-step thing.
Well, it's kind of that using the products all in conjunction with each other. They call it Texas two-step because it sounds kind of cool with a country dance and it goes with Texas, but I mean, it's basically using granular products along with insecticides throughout the yard, broadcasting a general purpose insecticide that's labeled for ants, and then using a granular product that's really granular products for ants are just for ants. So that, along with the broadcast and mound treating, like some people will just want to go out in the yard with a pump-up sprayer and just drench the mound, you know, and that's perfectly fine. But if you don't have anything else, again, you're likely going to move that mound from one area of the yard to the next. The Texas two-step is kind of, again, using all the products together, you know, to get the best result. You know,
yeah,
so.
For sure. How often during this time do you get these calls to go out and do these treatments?
You know, a lot of times fire ants, it's weird because sometimes fire ants aren't really a big issue for some people during certain seasons or certain years. You know, they may we don't have any real big problems. And next year, then they all of a sudden have a problem. You know, they're seeing them everywhere. So it's kind of seasonal. Just depends on your yard. A lot of times people have gardens where they're putting in fresh mulch and they're changing things. They're watering the soil a lot more. So a lot of those kind of different things work together to make the area more attractive to pests, not just fire ants, but other pests. But so then they may see some more activity because of that kind of thing. Usually our fire ant season is usually about April to October, you know. And then the winter months, you're not going to see as much activity in a lot of different pests just because it's cold and things kind of go dormant. Doesn't mean they're not there, and it doesn't mean they're not going to creep in, because pests are like people. You know, if it's cold outside, they're looking for a warm, comfortable place. If it's hot outside, they're looking for a cool, comfortable place. So I think there's that misconception that winter months, the pests, the interior, inside pests disappear. Well, not necessarily. It's just they're going to be pushed inside more. You may not see as much activity outdoors, but they will be looking for a generally comfortable area. So controlling inside is good too.
For sure. Talk a little bit about with pets and stuff like that and these kind of products. Is it dangerous for them, and pets and kids, you know, that are in this area? Is it dangerous, or
you know,
people be weary about that? Or
yeah, I mean, I just tell people pesticides, insecticides, they're designed to kill insects, bugs, pests. So you don't want, generally products are more absorbable. They're ingestible, inhaled. If they're wet or they're airborne, you know, when you're spraying and the wind catches it and, you know, gets it on your skin or it gets it in your eye, that's when it's susceptible, you know, to cause maybe some allergic reactions and things like that. Same with pets. Some pets are really super sensitive. So you want to make sure if we go inside and treat the inside that the products are dry before you let the pets run free in the house. If you don't, likely they could step into it, then lick their paws while they're cleaning, and then that's how they get it in them, you know. It's usually these products, if they're used according to the label, they're safe in how they're applied, but you have, like I said, certain pests or pets that are super sensitive, and any little amount is going to affect them. You know, they might get allergic reaction to them, sneezing or itching or something like that. But most of the time, if they're mixed according to the label, you don't have a real danger element related to them, you know. You still don't want them to get into it. Same with kids. I tell people all the time, you know, if little Johnny's walking around without his shoes on and he gets it on his feet, just rinse his feet off, you know, a little soap and water, rinse his feet off, and he'll be fine. Now, if little Johnny is super sensitive again, skin breaks out at any little thing, then sure, you want to make sure that it's dry before he kind of gets around, you know. And we're generally treating around the baseboards and openings, you know, the doors, access points. So you keep them away from those areas, and then you're fine. Yeah. So,
is there anything else that you feel like is important for people to know about fire ants as we kind of move into this season where we're going to be seeing them more? People need to start the treatment ahead of time. Anything like that that you feel like is important that we haven't kind of touched upon?
You know, you mentioned kids and pets, you know. So, I mean, like I said, if you're using the yard for events and you have a lot of children, birthday parties, then I would say get ahead of the game and start treating now. You know, if you're planning birthday parties through the summer months, then I would say it's going to be in your best interest. It'll be worth the money, worth the investment to treat now and kind of keep them under control, rather than all of a sudden birthday parties next week, we got to do something. You know, you may get some control, but a lot of times, even in those cases, you don't get the kind of control that you were hoping for. There's still a few mounds here and there, and you're still watching your kids, making sure they're not getting into anything. Same with pets. You know, pets, they don't know it's an ant mound.